Hey everybody, my name's Michelle and I'm a volunteer here at the Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Center, and this is our weekly wolf blog. I am hanging out with Navi and Tala. We're going to see if they actually come over or not. But I wanted to address a couple of things that I had read this week because unfortunately, as most of us know, it is hunting season again for wolves in most of the states that they exist in. Now, thankfully, they've been put back under protective status in some states, but unfortunately they are currently being hunted in Idaho and Montana. And of course, as we see all the time, especially with these people who are hunting wolves and killing them, there's a lot of really, really bad misinformation out there. So we want to talk about that a little bit today. So unfortunately, one of the things that comes up most often, especially on these anti-wolf pages, when the hunting season is going, people are posting pictures of the dead wolves that they've killed or trapped. They have a lot of posts regarding like, oh, well, way to go, you just saved 1,000 elk or 1,000 deer. Which is unfortunate that these people believe that, because time and time again we've seen that without predators in our ecosystems, the deer and elk tend to get very sick. And it's something that you see here in Colorado all the time because we don't have wolves. In fact, there's a lot of problems with wasting disease. About 1 in 6 deer and elk in Colorado actually have it, and a lot of it is caused because of lack of predators. Disease transfer is a lot greater between the deer and the elk, and so they tend to suffer. There's also a lot of starvation. We've seen that in even Yellowstone. Before they reintroduced the wolves, deer and elk, they were overeating, they were overbrowsing. There was a lot of problems. There's a lot of animals that were sick, not only the deer and the elk, but the whole ecosystem was suffering. There's been a lot of studies, and I know people they say it all the time. They're like, oh, well, you know, the beavers are doing a lot better in Yellowstone since the wolves were reintroduced, because now the elk are not overbrowsing as much, since they're acting more like elk instead of domestic cattle. But unfortunately, if you get on these anti-wolf pages, they're like, oh, well, why don't you come out and you see how well the beaver and the elk are doing? Well, we were actually in Yellowstone in April, and like I said, we actually saw far more elk than we saw bison. I mean, you take a spotting scope and you scan it over any of the ridges, any of the ledges, you're going to see elk butts everywhere. I mean, they're just hanging out. And so, unfortunately, and it's the same thing with the beaver, there was a study done prior to the wolf reintroduction that there were only 2 beaver dams in the park. Now there's 12. So is that like a huge, huge increase? No. But the fact is that there's more beaver dams, the water is slowing down, and now you have the opportunity for more wildlife to move in because there's more habitat available to them. Slower rivers mean that there's less erosion. You get more birds, you have reptiles, amphibians, and slower waters that are covered by new growth means that you also have colder water, which allows for more fish to come back into the rivers as well. So overall, there's been a boost of about 350 species in Yellowstone National Park and surrounding areas. But unfortunately, the anti-wolf people, they say, well, they're going to kill them all, just you wait. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. These guys, of course, they are powerful predators, but they're not going to kill their entire food source. That just would be ridiculous. And if that's something that we believe, then we wouldn't have deer, elk, bison, moose, or any of these animals when we, as Europeans, first arrived in the North Americas. They would all be gone because they were wolves in the first place. When Europeans first started arriving into North America, there were about 1 million wolves in North America, about 450,000 of those just being in the lower 48 states. So think about that. No, you're not taking the camera. Think about that as a fact, and then the fact that there were also millions of deer, elk, bison, and everything. Another argument that you hear all the time is, well, they are going to kill them all off because they're these giant Canadian timber wolves. Giant Canadian timber wolves. This is your giant Canadian timber wolf, folks. There's no such thing as a giant Canadian timber wolf. There are many different subspecies of gray wolf, all living throughout North America and Europe as well. And Canadian timber wolves That's not even a subspecies. The subspecies that previously existed in most of the places here in the United States were destroyed. Humans, as Europeans, they started moving westward. They killed off almost every single wolf in the United States. They left only a very tiny handful of Mexican grays. In fact, there were only 7 Mexican gray wolves left by the time that they were captured and used for a captive breeding program. And there were just a small handful of wolves living in Minnesota and Michigan. Now, unfortunately, when we talk about Canadian timber wolves, the fact is when we reintroduced wolves into Northern Rockies, we did capture wolves from Alberta as well as British Columbia for reintroduction. But it's not like they just captured a bunch of random wolves and they're like, here you go, let's throw wolves back in the ecosystem. You know, this is done by scientists. It's not just some random, willy-nilly, let's just go out and we're just going to catch some wolves and throw them out. There's a lot of science that goes behind it. And the subspecies that was chosen, and they were the most genetically similar to any of the wolves that lived here previously, and the size too. Now, people tend to think that wolves are these giant animals. Now, Navi here, you see how big he looks. If I sit right next to him, he comes up pretty high on my back. However, and if he were to stand up, he's probably about as high as I am. We'll try and do that in a little bit. We'll see. But he only weighs 110 pounds at the very most. He's a little chubby. Now, I looked up online, and average male wolves, they generally are anywhere from 90 to about 120 pounds. That's pretty average. If you actually look on Idaho's website and you average the weights out for the wolves that are killed every year, the average weight for a male wolf in Idaho is 105 pounds. So not so giant. Same thing, females, the average weight of an adult female wolf can range from about 70 to 90 pounds, but the average adult weight for female wolves in Idaho is 83 pounds. So they're definitely not these huge animals. Now, they look big because they have a lot of hair, and I don't know, I can't even get my hand in there, and this isn't even the full winter coat just yet. He'll get even bigger. And so a lot of times when you see these pictures of people who have killed these wolves and they're sitting with these giant wolves and they're like, oh, well, look how big he is, he's the size of a bear. What they're doing is a camera trick. It's a wide-angle camera lens. You take a picture of an animal or something that's just a little bit closer in front of something else, and it'll look a lot bigger because of the angle of the camera lens. So no, they're not these giant monsters. They're just, I can't even think of any logical way that these people get these ideas. And then the same thing, I read another thing online, the same post, this dead wolf, and unfortunately, the next thing I read was, well, they reproduce very, very quickly. And that's not true either. Because of the way that wolves have their social structure, if they start losing pack members, they stop breeding. It's like if we were to lose a family member of our own, we're not going to go out and, we're going to get married again and have kids right away. It doesn't happen. Unfortunately, the most recent and well-known example of pack structure being broken through hunting is with Lamar Valley. In 2012, the alpha female from the Lamar Valley pack, most famous wolf in the world, 06, was lured out of Yellowstone National Park, and she was shot and killed, along with the beta male and a couple other pack members. So the pack broke apart. The alpha male, he searched, he found a new mate, came back to his daughters who were still around, and they killed her. He went off, he tried to find another mate again. He has not had any pups. So the Lamar Valley pack, there are wolves living in the Lamar Valley. It is no longer the same pack. The whole pack was destroyed. And unfortunately, 60% of wolves that are killed every single year are pups. And it takes these animals 2 years to reach maturity. Then they have to leave their pack. Then they find a mate. And then they start their own pack. That can take almost 4 years for an animal to reach maturity and create their own pack. And when we're out hunting, we're out killing all these guys, they're not getting the chance to reproduce. There was the same post, the guy, he's like, well, they'll have 27 to 32 pups per litter. Wolves have 3 to 6 pups per litter, not 27 to 32. And that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, the biggest known litter of coyotes is 21, and that's because of a lot of hunting and trapping that goes on with them. They're a lot different from wolves. They increase in population in order, after being hunted. It's a lot different than with these guys where you go hunting them, their population plummets. And I guess the other sad thing is the same thing. It said, well, there's no mortality rate. 50% of wolves do not live to see their first birthday, and that's without being hunted. Keep in mind, 60% of wolves that are killed every year are first-year pups, and that's on top of the 50% natural mortality rate. So we're not having a lot of wolves surviving to reach adulthood. And then the same thing goes. There are natural predators for wolves. There's a lot of argument, well, there's no natural predators. So even though wolves do not eat other canines, wolves are still the #1 cause of death to other wolves. There's a lot of fighting over territories, and that's the most common way for an adult wolf to die in the wild, other than being killed by humans. And so unfortunately, there's just a lot of that bad, really, really bad mentality out there from people who don't like these animals, and they try and make up all these lies about them when really it's not true. And thankfully science, backs our side, but unfortunately, politics backs the other side, and money. And so unfortunately a lot of the bad myths still persist because of money and politics instead of science, where it should be. And that's unfortunately what the wolves are facing right now in the wild. And so unfortunately, that's what's going on now in Idaho, Montana. They are open season on wolves. Idaho classifies wolves as big game animals, but they can still be shot 365 days a year on private property. So it's not really hunting. When we're hunting wolves, we're hunting them out of hate. It's not hunting them for any other reason. It's hatred, and that's all you ever see when you see these people posting them with their dead bodies online, and posting pictures of the mom and the pups trapped next to each other with the mom dead and the pup screaming, trying to get away. And this is what we are considering wildlife management. And unfortunately, there's laws that are being passed to protect people that do this. I mean, look at the McKittrick policy, which protects poachers. They shoot a wolf and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was a coyote. And you get away with that. And they're trying to pass a law out in Wisconsin now to prevent people from filming hunts with dogs. So why would they do that if everything that they were doing was okay? So unfortunately, this is just some of the stuff that's going on, and it's important that people know about it, and it's unfortunate that we still, hunt wolves in this day and age. There's no reason for it. Science says otherwise, and unfortunately, it's, still going on, and it's all about the hate. So, sorry, this blog wasn't so happy or fun as some of the other ones, but this is the information that's important. And so, again, my name is Michelle. I am a volunteer here at Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Center, and we will see you guys next week.
And pronghorns and bison.